recording, I think. Yeah. Okay. So thank you all for getting on here. For everyone else, this will be posted for you guys on Blackboard, so you'll just have access to it. So there are 5 of you in this course, and you have the pleasure, or I guess the displeasure, however you want to look at it, of taking this class during the summer, which means it works a little bit differently than it would in a regular semester. Normally, when we do this in the fall and the spring, it's a little bit more, it's not intensive, any more intensive, but you get to kind of mold your own project, and we have a little bit more work on the front end. During the summer, because it's a shorter semester and things, we don't have as long to work on things. And everybody's a little bit more busy, I think, in the summer with personal obligations and things like that too. So it's a little bit shorter, it's a little bit different. So instead of having you guys sort of formulate your own project, this works a little bit more like comps. And I think I mentioned this in that introduction video, if you've seen that. But I've developed the prompt for you, and that has been posted on Blackboard. So I assume that you all have seen that already. If you haven't, it's posted in an announcement on our homepage, so give that a look. But that prompt is really set for you already, and it's open enough, and I think vague and kind of ambiguous and amorphous enough that you can sort of make it your own. All right, we're going to add Mackenzie. Let's see. Cool. One more person. We love adding people. Cool. All right, Mackenzie, you with us? Potentially. Cool.
You're on yes, mute. I am.
Cool. Yeah, it's fine. No, we just started, so you're good.
Perfect.
It hasn't the last 4 times.
All right. Cool. All right. So like I said, the prompt is posted for you guys in an announcement on Blackboard on our homepage. So give that a look. Has everyone had a chance to see that that's in the group? Yes, no, maybe?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I haven't looked at it yet, but I can go look at it.
Okay, yeah, no, and I'm gonna pull it up so you'll be able to see it in a second either way. And I guess I can go ahead and actually do that now. Let's do this, share. That's all that. That's that. Yeah, so as you can see, it's posted on our homepage here, and I've got it pulled up. Everybody seeing the screen? Yeah, cool. All right, so really, again, for those of you that have seen this is just going to be a little bit of review, but for those of you that haven't seen this, it'll be just kind of a pretty straightforward walkthrough of this. But essentially what you guys are doing for me is a comprehensive exam, right? And the way that those work is you're given a prompt and you respond to the prompt. This is a little bit different than kind of the true academic comprehensive exams that, you know, some other master students would do in other programs. This is more geared toward industry. This is more geared toward applied research. You know, the difference in academic and applied research is that applied research really has application in the world. You're looking at a real world issue, trying to develop methods to fix that or address that. So this is more of kind of what we're doing for this summer. So the prompt that you're working with this summer is, of course, AI driven, because that's kind of the big buzzy thing now. Everyone's concerned about AI. Everyone's using AI. And if they're not, they're trying to find ways to implement that in their strategy. So that's kind of what we're working on here. But just to meet the objectives of what you guys need for your industry project, it's broken down into 2 parts, and note those due dates for those different parts. So part 1 is going to be due sort of mid-June, which, you know, sort of 3 weeks from now, literally, to the day. So 6/21, and then the whole thing, which will include parts 1 and 2, is going to be due sort of mid-July. And the reason for those due dates are pretty just straightforward. It's just timing. Particularly at the end, I've got to have time to read everybody's projects and give a little bit of feedback on that, and also fill out paperwork for graduation for the graduate school. So they've got dates for that. But so that's why those dates are set, and it gives you plenty of time to complete both of those sections, I think. But this first part here, kind of the first part that's due in mid-June, so again, in like 3 weeks, is kind of the theoretical part. And part of what we look at, even with this applied research approach, is the idea of using academic literature, academic theories, models, and frameworks to build a case to address your actual real world problem, right? So we talk about theories and models because they provide explanations for behavior, right? So we can implement some of these academic principles into the real world practice, and that's kind of the goal of what we're doing here. So just looking at this part 1, it's pretty straightforward. It's about 6 pages is what we're looking for this part, but choosing 2 theories or approaches or models or topics that you're interested in, right? And we've got examples here of different theories and approaches and things like that. And even just issues like diversity and inclusion, which is a big issue, gender inclusion, and gendered issues in, PR and advertising, whatever it may be, right? That umbrella is pretty wide open for this section for you to choose what to write about. But you're choosing two topics. And what I would recommend, just for your own benefit, is choosing at least one theory. Whatever that means to you, whether it's, situational crisis communication theory, or even something as simple as framing theory, or whatever it may be, or theory of reason action, any of those sort of things that you might have discussed in your coursework. And there's actually a section in our Blackboard shell that's a theory review. So if you're having trouble coming up with that, there's a whole module in Blackboard that has theories that you can look into. But I would choose maybe one theory that is interesting to you, or one that you feel like you can write about, or that may actually influence the second part down here, which we'll talk about in a second. And then I would also focus on maybe a different issue. So maybe one of those different topics down here, whether it's diversity or brand management, or some sort of model that you've seen in your coursework that you thought was interesting, or again, something that might play into this second part here. I don't really care what the second part is, but what you're doing in this first written part is giving me kind of a comprehensive look at that theory and that model, or whatever it is that you choose, both of those. And the key constructs and tenets of that theory, and sort of a literature review, very condensed literature review about those topics, right? And then what you're doing from, again, the practical perspective, is providing a description of how that theory can help you either make decisions or guide your practice in the industry, right? So again, we're tying, or attempting to tie, the academic work into the practical or applied work, the actual industry side of it. Because a lot of times, I'm sure you guys kind of feel this way, you study the academic stuff, but you can't really find a connection to real world practice, or how to actually implement that in the real world. So this is kind of geared toward making sure that you guys can make that connection from all of your coursework and everything you've studied so far into real world practice, right? And so that's the point of this first section. And again, we recommended 6 pages for that. However you want to break that down is fine. These page counts aren't set. That's just kind of a recommendation. I wouldn't do any less than 6, but more is sort of always welcome, right? And something I mentioned here too, and what I mentioned in the discussion, is this section can kind of springboard you into your actual scenario, this part 2 down here, and can sort of assist you with that. It doesn't have to, but if you're going to go through the trouble of writing this first part already, you might as well use it kind of as a launching point into what you're doing in the second part. Okay, so all that's due in this first part, that's due mid-June, is that theoretical written out literature review section, right? And sort of how that applies to the real world. So you're choosing 2 things, a theory, a model, whatever it may be. Again, I recommend one theory, and then either a model or a topic or something that you are interested in, or again, that can help you with the second part. It can be 2 theories. It doesn't really matter to me, but at least one theory to show me that you can actually synthesize an explanation of what that is. And then whatever that other topic is, the same thing, and tie both of those into real world practice. Okay. And again, you've got access to me in this first part as you start writing that. If you have questions or issues, you're welcome to kind of one-on-one meet with me and sort of troubleshoot that as needed. All right. So that's the first part. And again, if y'all have questions throughout this process, we'll do a question thing at the end. But if anything comes up, just chime in and let me know. All right. So that's the first part. Okay. And then sort of the meat of the project is the second part, where you were actually given the scenario that you're meant to address and sort of work through, right? And so this is due sort of mid-July, and this is kind of the end of the paper. So you'll submit your first part to me. And again, none of this is graded, right? This is a pass-fail course, but you'll submit that first half of me, the June part, just so I can see that you have made adequate progress on that front. If there's anything kind of egregious that I see in that theory part, I will give you some feedback on that. But for the most part, that's mostly just a benchmarking thing for me to let me know that you've actively been working on this project and aren't sort of waiting until the last minute to get it done. So again, that's due mid-June. And then this date in July, 7/19, you'll submit both parts. So if I gave you any feedback on that first part, make sure you make that feedback and you'll submit the whole paper, parts 1 and 2, in this July date. All right, so just so we're clear on that. But again, the industry side of this and kind of the point of the applied research part of this comes in this second part here. So you have a scenario, and this scenario is essentially asking you to work with, and you're working on behalf of sort of an agency, right? Your organization primarily works with clients in 3 major industries: automotive, healthcare, and finance. Those industries are completely arbitrary. I chose them because they're different enough to have nuance. And there's also plenty of utility for this kind of work in each of those industries. They all have their own sort of ins and outs and nuances of how AI could come in and actually benefit, or it could just be used in those industries, right? So essentially, a representative from one of those industries has reached out to your agency for assistance in developing their next communication plan to reach new customers. They don't know how to do this, but they've heard that AI could be potentially beneficial, right? So this whole section is working with artificial intelligence, generative AI, not just ChatGPT. I want you to kind of get out of the mindset of ChatGPT. That is sort of the most well-known. But, working, and it can still be used, obviously, but there's plenty of other platforms and resources out there that use AI that could be beneficial here. So just, think a little bit broader than just ChatGPT. I know we use that all the time, and it's a great tool, but there is more out there. All right, so your task here, once you've got this scenario, and again, y'all can read through this on your own. I'm not going to sort of reread this to you, but your goal is to kind of tell me about how AI is being currently used in ad and PR, how it can be implemented in the areas of audience analysis, media monitoring, content creation, researching your competitors, market research, whatever it may be. And again, this is just a 2-page thing, so it's not going to be incredibly comprehensive, but comprehensive enough to sort of make a case, right? And then looking at other aspects of this, compare, again, giving me information that you've learned from your courses, compare qualitative and quantitative research, the differences, pros and cons of both of those. And then tell me essentially how you could propose research methods, one quantitative and one qualitative, that you could use to help gather information to put this communication plan together for your client, right? So for example, if you're working in the, let's say, healthcare arena, right, in that healthcare industry, think about ways that you could put together research methods to gather more information about your particular patient pool, your region, your hospital system, potential, prevalent healthcare issues in your area, to get more information about those issues to help guide the communication program for that client, right? Same thing for automotive or something like that. How could you find more information about your potential customer base and your audience base to build out a more effective communication plan for that automotive, client or whatever it may be, right? And in that, include some details on those methods, right? So describe the method that you would put together. And when we say research method, that essentially means the instrument type. So would it be a survey, a focus group, a content analysis, some other sort of qualitative measures, interviews, what would that be? And provide the potential research questions you would answer for that client. So why would you choose that method, and what research questions would that method potentially help you answer for that client? Okay. How would you recruit participants? What is the sample? Why did you choose that sample? How big would it need to be? Who would they need to be? What's the demographic breakdown of that group, and why? And if you're not using human subjects, and again, we're not running any of these experiments, obviously. But if you were using human subjects, how would you get those human subjects? What would that demographic look like in terms of breakdown? But also, if you weren't looking at using human subjects, so if you were doing something like a content analysis or a discourse analysis or anything like that, how would you choose the sampling frame? Meaning, how would you choose what elements you analyzed, or what pieces you looked at, right? How would you choose that sampling frame too, right? Then describe the design of your study, including how you suggest collecting data, how you would analyze that data, what types of data you would be looking for, what type of statistics you'd be looking for. Is it just descriptive statistics, mean, median, mode, all that kind of stuff, or what that would look like. And then tying it back into the whole point of this, discuss how AI could potentially be used to develop any research instruments needed for your methods. So, for example, I've used ChatGPT to help me run out things like t-tests and statistical analysis, right? It's just a refresher of how to actually do that. So how could AI potentially help you develop the research instruments? If you were using or developing a survey or focus group questions, AI is really good at that. There are AI survey generators. There are, AI kind of um, statistical systems, right, that you can use. So there's a lot of ways that you can implement artificial intelligence into research design, particularly in the applied sense, right, when the stakes aren't as high as sort of academic research. But how could you actually implement some AI into those research methods, or could you, and would it be ethical, right? And again, that's kind of tying into that whole point, right? You're helping the client put together a communication plan, and your job is to tell me how you could use research to make that plan more effective, right? Um, Again, just notes that I've noticed from previous years that I've seen with this. You're only focusing on one of those industries, so you're only focusing on automotive, healthcare, or finance. And again, they all have enough nuance between the two of them that, or the three of them, that you should be fine to find a lot of differentiation there. Don't create something that works for all three. It might work for all three in theory, but you're only focusing on one of those industries. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, so there's that. Be sure to look into how AI is already being used in your industry's promotions as a starting point to your own plan. Are they already using, something like ChatGPT to write the copy for their ads? We all kind of know currently a lot of advertising and a lot of promotion looks, sounds, and feels exactly the same. And it's because we are using tools to help create that content instead of just the human element, right? So if they're already using these things in terms of promotion, how are they using that, and how can you continue using that or pivot that for this client in that communications plan? So I'm going to reiterate, you're not putting together a communications plan for them. What you're doing is you're showing me how you can develop a research plan or a research study that could give more information to make the plan that you do develop more effective and successful for the client. All right. And that's kind of it. So there's just those two sections. The first one's probably a little bit easier than the second one. The theory section and that sort of background section is probably a little bit easier to put together because that's just secondary research. The second part two, is where you actually get into the sort of creative and sort of the individualized look at this stuff. And so that again is a little bit different. And that's where you come in and develop the pieces that actually show me that you can do the thing in the real world. Again, it's we've said I think that second part should be about 8 pages. Again, that's flexible. In total, just so everyone's aware, the document as a whole, part 1 and 2 collectively, should be about 15, 18, 20 pages, something like that. No more than like 20, because I have to read them all, quite frankly. And that does not include your things like your works cited, your title page, any appendices that you put, but 20 pages of content is probably the max that you would want for this. In terms of things like citations and references, I tend to go around the same number of pages. So you've got about 15 to 20 pages. We need at least 15 to 20 citations, and you're working on a pretty extensive literature review of that theory section, if nothing else. And so it should be really easy to get that number of citations. Again, more is welcome, but we need at least that many just to justify what you're writing about, right? And make sure that everybody's squared away on that. So I think that's kind of it for me. I want to leave the rest of this open for questioning. I know I've talked for about way too long at this point, but do you have questions about this process? I mean, I know that it's open-ended for a reason, and it's a little ambiguous and amorphous for a reason because I want you guys to kind of build it out on your own. And none of the five of you should be doing the exact same thing. There'll obviously be crossover in terms of industry and probably method and things like that. But the theories and things you look up, the models you discuss, how that springboards into your project should all be different. So there's enough, again, nuance is the word of the day for me, but there should be enough nuance between the five of you that, no one's doing the exact same thing. All right. Do you have questions about any of this or just some comments or any concerns about it?
No, this all seems super straightforward and yeah, clear.
Okay. Josh, you think you're good on that?
Yeah, good. Is it okay to like on the industry itself, like for instance, healthcare? I actually do work with a large healthcare group.
That's
Is it
true.
okay to
Yep.
kind of hone this toward like, for instance, it's Native American, it's a
Yep.
tribally affiliated. So,
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean the point of this too, I mean, if you're working in those industries, that's obviously wonderful. But I want you to think too, even if you're not working directly in those industries, like how can working and how can the research that we're doing here help, what I'm doing professionally in the long term, right? Because that's kind of the point of this too, is making sure that you can actually develop the instruments, do the research that's needed to justify that and put that together successfully, with the end goal of you being able to implement some of this stuff in your own workplace as needed, or at least have the systems in place to where you could. So yeah, no, I think if there's direct benefit for you, exactly. So sure, that's fine. Bethany, anything on your end? You think you're good? Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. So,
I
Yeah.
oh
No, you're
sorry.
good.
The only one question I had too, you mentioned on Blackboard that you had a spot with all those theories mentioned, or like I was trying to poke
Yes.
around on that while you were talking, while
Yeah.
I was listening while you were talking.
Yes.
And I
Great.
didn't see that right off the bat, but I don't know if
Yeah.
it was like deeper in
So
the modules.
yeah. So that should be, um, if you look at module 2
Module 2.
in
Okay.
Blackboard, yeah, those readings.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that'll give you that's like a broad overview, right? Of some of the main theories and stuff we talk about. But if there's even just some more general sort of communication based theories, whether it's framing or cultivation or narrative theory or anything that you think was interesting or anything that you are invested in looking more into or that could benefit that second part, I'm open to that. And if you are looking at that and you have questions, feel free to let me know and I'll kind of talk you through it as needed. But yeah, that'll give you a good overview. And also in that module 3 of the course as well, that gives you some information about methodology. So when you get into that second part of the prompt, part 2, that module 3 will help you kind of look at different methods, both qualitative and quantitative, kind of reasoning and justification for why you would use one or the other or both. And as you develop those quantitative and qualitative methods for that second part, that will be a good place to look at to kind of walk you through how those work and why. So that's there for you too.
Oh, that's perfect. Thanks. I'll poke around on all those.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And again, it's not going to be comprehensive necessarily, but if there's something that you would like to look at that's not there, just talk with me and then we'll kind of figure out if that's cool. But there's going to be a lot of at least discussion of both types of method there for you to kind of look at. Yep.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I mean, obviously we haven't really dug into this super far yet, but as you start working on these projects, at least in the first part, I am happy to sort of meet with you or chat with you as needed via email or Zoom or whatever, to help you through figuring out what you want to focus on and that kind of thing. Once it gets to the second part, that's kind of where I taper off. Once we have sort of that foundational piece together, that second part where you actually produce the work essentially, I'm not so much hands-on there. That's kind of really up to you guys to work through on your own. But again, if there's a quick question or there's just a point of clarification that you want, I'm happy to answer that. But it's not going to be me sort of sitting down one-on-one with you and talking you through that. I'm happy to kind of work through that on that first part, but for the second part, it's really up to you to put that together because that's the whole point of this thing, right? But as you work through that, as you start working on this, if you have questions, or just need, again, points of clarification, particularly those of you that weren't on the Zoom call, feel free to reach out and let me know. But it's pretty straightforward. It's all written out for you. I know a lot of my assignments sometimes are a little ambiguous, but this one's not, at least in terms of instructions. So, but again, I'm open and available to you guys. So if anything comes up, just let me know. You're kind of on your own unless, again, you need me independently. But just to make notes again of those deadlines, your first deadline is again June 21st. So you've got a good amount of time to get those 6 pages written. I mean, that's not very extensive at all. But yeah, just keep me posted on your progress, and we'll work through this together. Again, like I said in my intro video, this is kind of the last hurdle you guys have to graduation for the most part. So we'll keep it as straightforward and easy as possible. And again, once we're done with everything this semester, I'm the one that has to put your paperwork in the system so you can graduate. So make sure you get all that to me on time, and you should be fine. But if there's nothing else, I will let you guys go. But like I said, keep me posted. Let me know if you have questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all come up with.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Sounds
We'll
good.
talk soon.
Thanks.
Yep, absolutely.
Have a
Have
good
a good one.
afternoon.
Yep, y'all too. Bye.